Salams and welcome. Thank you for joining me in another episode of the Quran in English Basics for Beginners. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Surah 16, chapter Nahl, the Bee, verse number 58. When news is brought to one of them of the birth of a female child, his face darkens and he is filled with inward grief. Now, in the traditional Arab Bedouin society 1400 years ago, women were not treated as equal to men. They were regarded as less worthy. There are many reasons for that. And in fact, this tradition even applies in modern day times in some cultures. For example, in some Indian cultures or some Pakistani or Hindu or India or Bangladesh or Asia, in China and so on, where men or the boys are regarded as more worthy than girls. So when a woman gives birth to a boy, there is great celebration and joy in the house. But when she gives birth to a daughter or a girl, then the in-laws or other family members, they scowl and they're not really that happy with a daughter. And that has been the tradition so many years ago. But in the ancient Arab society, what was even more serious was that the birth of a girl was so shameful that in fact some of them hid their shame by burying the girl alive. Can you imagine the PTSD that some of these people went through? And they even narrated their stress and the emotional trauma that haunted them for the rest of their life. And we know of some tragic examples where the narrations say that while they were burying the daughter, the Sahaba says, she lifted her hand and she touched my beard. She did not know what I was doing, but out of love she touched my beard. Now can you imagine what this father is going through? That the society pressure is putting this immense pressure on him to bury his amazing female child. And it was not something they wanted to do. They were traumatized for life. Tears were going down their eyes while they were narrating these stories. And one of the other Sahabi, or one of the other individuals of Mecca, and there were quite a few like that, who could not bear to see the difficulty of burying girls alive. And he would hang around near the graveyard. And when he would see a father coming, walking his little toddler towards the graveyard, he knew exactly what's going to happen. This father is going to bury his child. And he would then approach this man and he would say, "Give me that child. I will raise her up myself." And some of them reluctantly did that, and he then raised these children who were destined to death just because they were female, and he raised them and he gave them life, right? So this is some of the cultural pressures that they were faced with, and it was the job of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, to change this very deep-rooted cultural mindset. Because you must remember, Nabi Sal'lal'laa'hu A'layhi Was'sallam was rahmatul lil alamin, the Prophet of mercy. And being a merciful and compassionate person, his eyes would fill with tears at what parents or what fathers would do by burying their female daughters alive. And he went about changing this system in society, so much so that Islam has placed such a great honor and dignity to women, that paradise, for as far as a woman is concerned, a mother, paradise lays at the feet of a mother. And famously, the Prophet Mohamed, peace and blessings be upon him, encouraged his followers by saying, if anybody raises 3 daughters, he will be with me in paradise like this. And he raised his 2 fingers. He said, they will be with me like this, close to me like this in paradise. So that's 3 daughters. And someone asked, what about 2? He said, even if you got 2 daughters, you'll be close to me. And someone said 1, he said also 1. So as long as you raise a daughter, a female, you'll be close with Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam like this, close to him in paradise. You'll also be close to him if you raise an orphan. You will be like this with Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, close to him in paradise, right? And in this way here, he tried to encourage people to move away from their cultural mindset to say that boys are more worthier than girls. And in fact, Islam had given women voting rights or the ability to speak and make their voice heard 1400 years ago. There were so many instances where women would attend the masjid and they would ask questions. And the Prophet ﷺ also set aside a special day for them. And he would also ask women for their opinion, as the famous example at the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, when the Prophet ﷺ gave a command and the various Sahaba did not want to follow the command because they were emotionally devastated at the unfair terms of the treaty. And he went to his tent and his wife told him, why don't you do A, B, C, and D? And he obeyed, he followed her instructions, and lo and behold, she was 100% correct. So in this way, he honored and raised the status of women. Now let's look at it from a medical point of view very, very briefly. And this is to encourage those people who expect their daughter-in-law to give birth to a son. So here's a boy. A boy gets married to a girl. And the mother-in-law, she tells the girl, hey, you better make sure, I want a boy. You better make sure. And the poor girl says, yes, no, I will try my best. No, I will give you a boy, Inshallah, I'll give you a boy. I'll give you a boy. And then she gives birth to a girl. And the mother-in-law gives ayah. Hey, the next child, I want a boy, You better make sure. I said, yes, no, I'll make sure. Until eventually then he says, now I'll marry someone else because you're only giving me girls. But to cut a long story short, is it fair to condemn the bride and to ask her that she must give a boy? Let's look at facts. Let's look at medicine and science. In brief, both the boy and the girl got 46 chromosomes. Then this is known as a diploid. From the haploid, you have 23 chromosomes from the boy and 23 chromosomes from the girl. The 23 chromosomes from the boy, that's the sperms, and from the girl, that's the eggs. And the sperms are XY, and the eggs are XX. Now, a girl has got XX chromosomes. And a boy has got XY chromosomes. This thing here, Y, is very important. Now, here's a girl, a woman, a female. All her eggs are X. She only got X eggs. All her eggs are X. No difference. And a boy or the husband, he's got X, Y, X, Y. Now, well, in fact, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 X's and 2 Y's. Now, if the sperm of the man, if the X, there is an X sperm and a Y sperm, it meets the egg of the woman. And the egg is an X egg and an X egg. All the eggs are X. Right. So if in that particular intimacy, if the boy, if his sperm, if the X sperm wins the race, and the X sperm is the first sperm to meet the egg, then the child is an XX child, which is a girl. If the Y sperm wins the race out of 100 million sperms or 250 million sperms, because the X and Y are racing with each other, and on that particular day, it just so happens that the Y sperm wins the race, then that child is an XY, which is a boy. In conclusion, the mother, she only gives X. She's got no choice on whether it's a boy or a girl. The father's sperm decides whether the baby will be a girl or a boy. The mother got no choice in the matter. Are we clear on that? So the next time the mother-in-law shouts her daughter-in-law to say, I want a boy, this girl must say, why didn't you go talk to your son about it? Because it is the boy's sperm which will determine if he will have 3 daughters or he will have 3 sons. It all depends on the father. The mother's womb will take whatever sperm comes in. If it is an X sperm, she will have a girl. If it is a Y sperm, she will have a boy, in simple terms. So, in simple terms, let's remove the cultural problems that we have in the world in some countries and nations when the mother-in-laws put great pressure on the daughter-in-laws to say, I want a boy. And mother-in-laws need to understand that her daughter-in-law got no choice in the matter. She must rather speak to her son that he must shoot properly and he must try and get the Y sperm, because if you want a boy, you need a Y sperm. But nobody got choice on that. Right? You can't predict that unless now with modern IVF and in vitro fertilization and designer babies, then they can specifically choose whether they want a X sperm or a Y sperm, and do they want blonde hair and blue eyes and Caucasian skin and so on, that they can choose it, right? But other than that, from a natural process, there's no choice. With shame does he hide himself from his people because of the bad news he has had. Shall he retain it on sufferance and contempt, or bury it in the dust? Ah, what an evil choice they decide on. To those who believe not in the hereafter applies the similitude of evil. That means that if you don't believe in a life after death, it means you have voluntarily or involuntarily chosen to fly the banner of the devil or Satan or Shaitan, because you feel you are not accountable to anybody. You are not answerable to nobody. You can do what you want. It's your life. Why must you answer to anybody? It's your body. You can do with it what you want to. It's your bank account. You can do with it what you want to. It's your life. You can do with it what you want to. That's where you make a mistake. It's not your life. It's not your body. Everything belongs to God. You are simply a trustee. So if you don't believe that one day you will die and you will be brought back to your Creator and you'll have to give an account of what you've done in life, then basically you have allowed arrogance and ego and a narcissistic personality. You have allowed the devil to occupy your brain. So to those who believe not in the hereafter applies the similitude of evil. And evil basically is the devil or Satan or Shaitan or Lucifer. To Allah applies the highest similitude, for He is the exalted in power, full of wisdom. If Allah were to punish people for their wrongdoing, He would not leave on the earth a single living creature, but He gives them respite for a stated term. When their term expires, they would not be able to delay the punishment for a single hour, just as they would not be able to anticipate it for a single hour. May your life be filled with barakah and blessings. May all that is good for you come to you in great abundance. Take care and look after yourself. Alhamdulillah.